What is good, YouTube? My name is Ash Porter and welcome to the channel. Today we are looking at this little book, Tribe on Homecoming and Belonging by Sebastian Junger. And I will tell you this now, this is a special book. And so question number one, should you read this book? It's an easy answer. Yes, this may be a small book, but it is rammed full of life and knowledge. This book is a mix of history, psychology, and anthropology, and sort of unravels the human basic need for community, or as he would put it, a tribe. And then he goes into detail about what are the consequences, both for wider society, but also especially for war veterans when they don't have that tribe or community. This book focuses a lot around war and veterans and their integration back into society, and I found that so useful. But it also, like I said, focuses a lot on wider society as a whole and the need for community and tribalism. It's fascinating, it's well written, it's full of amazing story and imagery, and also it's just not that long, so it's got no faff, it gets straight to the point, and it's really accessible. I recommend read this book. The first bit of key information is quite simply, we are built to be part of community. Humanity, humans, we have an innate instinct and need to be part of a tribe, to be part of a community, and we suffer when we're not part of that. He particularly looks at how our society is built now and how it makes us kind of neglect that need we have, and then lays out the consequences of that. And he also does some historical case studies where he looks specifically at like Native American tribes and how they used to function, and compares that to our society now. Then throughout this book, Junger lays out what a tribe should look like, what a community where human flourishing is allowed should probably be like. And so reading his work in this book, I found that there were 6 key things that kind of make up a tribe and what a good tribe should look like. But those 6 things come under one sort of overarching heading which summarizes it all, and that is that human flourishing in a tribe can be found when we look after the greater good of the tribe rather than ourselves. Okay, so what are those 6 things? Number 1, every human needs the opportunity to be selfless, that opportunity to serve others, to put others before yourself and think of the greater good, to give yourself to a cause. Number 2, we need a dependency on others. So often we're focused on being by ourselves. I can do this by myself, but actually he writes about how sometimes we need dependency and we need to be part of a community where it's safe to be dependent on others for a while. Number 3, we need a cohesive and egalitarian society. Now, don't get this wrong, we're not talking about the kind of equality that comes in communism. It's different to that, but we're talking about an equal respect and way of being treated where everyone is on that level playing field, and there isn't people who are dominating leaders and propel themselves above others for the sake of power, but there's actually a communal understanding of that. Number 4, the ability to be close to others. It's as simple as that, the ability to get to know people, to become family with other people. Number 5, moral codes that everyone kind of adheres to. In this book he talks about some of the Native American tribes and how they had these moral codes, but they were never written down. They were not really spoken about, but everyone knew. They just knew how to respect each other, and when you disrespected the tribe or each other in a certain way of acting, they knew that wasn't right and that they had punishments for that. And then number 6, a really interesting one which he talks about later in the book, getting this balance between not allowing people to freeload, and so we need times where you're dependent on other people, but not allowing people to freeload and be incredibly selfish in that way, but also having the counterbalance of being a society or a tribe which has compassion, which cares for those who are vulnerable and in need in that society. And so those are kind of the 6 things I picked out and thought, what makes a great tribe or community? So how does that compare to our society now? We've talked about maybe what a good tribe, a community, society could look like, but what does that compare to ours? And so, the first thing is, we don't like to rely on other people. I think we promote this idea of do it yourself, be the strong person, make your own life, and actually we can lose that dependency on other people. Even the way we live, it's all like self-enclosed, us. And I think we've lost that ability to rely on people, and that's such a shame. And then secondly as well, I'm gonna speak for myself here, and I think it speaks for wider society, but I don't wanna put that on you. But I know I can be incredibly selfish. And I know I can act in a way that is incredibly selfish, and probably I would not have got away with this in Native American tribes or in a quality community or tribe. I wouldn't get away with some of the ways I live. And I think we could probably all, if we're being honest, reflect that about ourselves a bit, that we live in an incredibly selfish society where it's all about us. It's all about this superhero syndrome where we're the main character. And that's not the way we're built to be. That's not the way Junger would argue that we're meant to thrive. And then thirdly, quoting anthropologist Sharon Abrahamowitz. Sorry if I butchered that name. If you can't tell by now, I suck at names. We are not good to each other. Our tribalism is to an extremely narrow group of people. Our children, our spouse, maybe our parents. Our society is alienating, technical, cold and mystifying. Our fundamental desire as human beings is to be close to others, and our society does not allow for that. I don't think I need to say much more on that. She sums it up perfectly. And then finally, the thing I think, the fourth thing which sort of separates our society from this ideal of what tribalism, community, society could look like, from what Junger has said, is that we're so split politically. We see it in the world now. It's horrific to watch, both in the US at the moment, there's a lot going on, but in the UK as well, and all around the world, we're so split politically. We have such varying views, and we've taken things to real unhealthy extremes. We aren't good at finding middle ground anymore, and I think that's so damaging for our society and our community. And I think what's really interesting is right now, more than ever, this is being highlighted in our society with everything going on with COVID, in the way that for us in the UK, some other countries, they're a lot more freer than this moment, but we're basically locked inside our houses, not really allowed to go out and live how we are meant to be living. And this is just, it's highlighted to everyone how important community is. But what is interesting in this book, Junger talks about how so often historically that when crisis comes, people tend to band together. People tend to break down social boundaries and come together and form these amazing communities and tribes that are instinctive, rather than like our modern societies now. But I think people tried to do that at the start of COVID, but because of the restrictions, because of the way we're locked inside, I think it's really stopped us from doing this, and it's almost enhanced that feeling of missing community and not being able to react instinctively and naturally to this experience. So that's tribalism and society and community. But I think there was some other stuff that was covered in this book about war, which is really interesting to me, and particularly the information about recovery from PTSD and how it differs in veterans compared to other forms of PTSD. Now, when he talks about this, he quotes Dr. Rachel Yehuda, again, I'm really sorry if I butchered your name, who speaks about how it is different. And for one of the main reasons it's different in war veterans is when they're at war, they probably have some of the best times of their life. They're part of this amazing, tight-knit tribal community where they care for each other so deeply. They literally die for each other in that setting. They have formed like a human tribe that is a place to flourish. They've gone somewhere where they feel like this might be the most important thing they've ever done. And so they have some of the best times of their lives. These incredible memories are formed. But then with war, that's mixed with horrific memories as well. And so in their recovery process, whereas often people who are recovering from PTSD, it's just negative memories, negative stuff they're dealing with. And whereas with war vets, they've got all these memories mixed up, and so it makes the recovery so much harder. I just found that fascinating. I think actually it opens up this window to understand a bit more why war for so many is appealing. It may not necessarily be appealing in terms of the actual horrific slaughter side of it, but actually the unity, the tribalism, that sense of purpose that people are given in wars, serving in the armed forces, probably can't be found anywhere else. And so I think that's it. That's the key information which stood out to me in this book. Okay, so now it's time for that classic bit, what am I taking away from this? What have I learned for myself, and how am I applying what I've learned in this book to my life? So I think the first thing which this book has taught me, and I think actually, it's not something I'm necessarily going to apply, but it's given me, is a deeper understanding and empathy towards soldiers and an understanding of war. So for me, myself, I've been on a bit of a journey with this over the past 7-8 years. I've gone from when I was like 15, 16, just at the end of my GCSEs, really seriously considering joining the army. I felt like, that's where I'm going to find purpose. That's where I'm going to find life. And that could be the best thing for me. And it ended up not happening. And I kind of have held on to that and thought, oh, what if? But then over the past few years, I've kind of learned a lot more. And I've almost gone in the opposite direction where I've been very against war, not against soldiers. I just want to put out that I have the biggest admiration, and I probably always will do, for soldiers. I think what they do is incredible. The way they push themselves, the boundaries they break, and the way they literally risk their lives in their job in such an extreme way. However, fundamentally, I've come to a place where I disagree with war, and that's where I still hold now. However, I think what this book has given me is a better understanding of it, a better way to put myself in a soldier's shoes, a better way to empathise and sympathise with them. However, I still strongly disagree with the people higher up, directing the wars and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like, like I said, it's given me a greater empathy towards soldiers and an understanding of war. The second one is quite simple, and to be honest, a bit sad, is like, I think I've taken away from this just a deeper longing for community, for a tribe. I have amazing friends, I'm part of some amazing communities, but right now in COVID, it feels like everything's so far away, and like it's just highlighted even more. And so if anything, it's probably made this experience of COVID a little bit more painful, but it's always worth learning about this stuff. And then the final thing is just kind of a bit of personal reflection, and that I challenge you to reflect on as well. I'm just going to read a quote from Junger, which has really challenged me, and I know I'm going to take away and be thinking about. And so he says, "People speak with incredible contempt about, depending on their views, the rich, the poor, the educated, the foreign-born, the president, or the entire US government. It's a level of contempt which is usually reserved for enemies in wartime, except that now it's applied to our fellow citizens. Unlike criticism, contempt is particularly toxic because it assumes a moral superiority in the speaker." Now, I felt hugely challenged by that, because I think it's so easy to sit in this seat here, for me to sit right here and to look at the news and to judge our politicians, to judge people and feel contempt towards people who have different political views than me, who live a life that I disagree with, or whatever it is. It's so easy, and I think it just hit me so hard, that bit about, he said, like, we have these levels of contempt which are so normal now in our society, are normally reserved for wartime, like that, like hatred and for the other, but we have that within our society. And I just feel so challenged by that. I feel challenged to not feel that. I don't think I have a moral superiority, but often we can probably act like that. And so that's a challenge that I'm taking away as well. I want to learn to not be someone who contempts, who has that, who unknowingly takes a moral high ground. I don't want to do that because I know I'm not perfect. And so how can I take that moral high ground? And so there we have it. That is Tribe by Sebastian Junger. I absolutely love this book, and I hope I was able to communicate it well enough. I really recommend go read this book. Like I said, it's not that big, it's accessible, it's full of life and quality knowledge, and I really recommend it. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you next time.